The air smelled of honeysuckle and regret that evening as Eleanor sat on her porch, the old swing creaking under her weight. At 75, her hands, once steady enough to thread a needle in the dark, now trembled slightly as they clutched a worn photograph. In it, her grandchildren, Lily and Max, grinned at her with gap-toothed smiles, their small hands sticky with ice cream from a summer long gone. She traced their faces, her heart aching with a love that felt like it could split her chest open. $2 million. That's what she'd saved for them. Every penny scraped from a lifetime of sacrifice. But her son, David, had made sure she'd never see them again. Eleanor's life hadn't always been this quiet. She'd grown up in a small Ohio town, where dreams were as scarce as the jobs. Her parents, factory workers with calloused hands and tired eyes, taught her the value of $1. She married young, to a man named Henry who promised her the stars but could only afford a roof. They built a life together, modest but full of love, raising David in a home where laughter was currency. Henry's death 20 years ago had left a void, but Eleanor filled it with purpose, her grandchildren. From the moment Lily was born, followed by Max 2 years later, Eleanor saw them as her second chance at leaving something good in the world. The savings began small, $10 here, 20 there, tucked away in a bank account she'd opened in secret. She worked late into her 60s, cleaning houses, sewing alterations, even selling homemade jams at the farmer's market. Every cent she didn't need for herself went to that account. She'd imagined the day she'd hand it over to Lily and Max, college funds, maybe a house, or a start to whatever dreams they'd chase. $2 million by the time she was 75. It wasn't just money, it was her heart, poured into numbers. But David changed everything. Her only child, once her pride, had grown distant after Henry's death. He'd always been ambitious, chasing promotions and a life bigger than the one Eleanor and Henry could credential. The air smelled of honeysuckle and regret that evening as Eleanor sat on her porch, the old swing creaking under her weight. At 75, her hands, once steady enough to thread a needle in the dark, now trembled slightly as they clutched a worn photograph. In it, her grandchildren, Lily and Max, grinned at her with gap-toothed smiles, their small hands sticky with ice cream from a summer long gone. She traced their faces, her heart aching with a love that felt like it could split her chest open. $2 million. That's what she'd saved for them. Every penny scraped from a lifetime of sacrifice. But her son, David, had made sure she'd never see them again. Eleanor's life hadn't always been this quiet. She'd grown up in a small Ohio town, where dreams were as scarce as the jobs. Her parents, factory workers with calloused hands and tired eyes, taught her the value of $1. She married young, to a man named Henry who promised her the stars but could only afford a roof. They built a life together, modest but full of love, raising David in a home where laughter was currency. Henry's death 20 years ago had left a void, but Eleanor filled it with purpose, her grandchildren. From the moment Lily was born, followed by Max 2 years later, Eleanor saw them as her second chance at leaving something good in the world. The savings began small, $10 here, 20 there, tucked away in a bank account she'd opened in secret. She worked late into her 60s, cleaning houses, sewing alterations, even selling homemade jams at the farmer's market. Every cent she didn't need for herself went to that account. She'd imagined the day she'd hand it over to Lily and Max, college funds, maybe a house, or a start to whatever dreams they'd chase. $2 million by the time she was 75. It wasn't just money, it was her heart, poured into numbers. But David changed everything. Her only child, once her pride, had grown distant after Henry's death. He'd always been ambitious, chasing promotions and a life bigger than the one Eleanor and Henry could provide. When he married Laura, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper ambitions, Eleanor sensed a shift. Laura wanted more money, more status, more than Eleanor's simple life could offer. At first, Eleanor tried to bridge the gap, babysitting Lily and Max, baking cookies, telling stories of their father as a boy. But Laura's influence grew, and David began to pull away. 3 years ago, it all fell apart. Eleanor had visited their new home in the city, a sleek, modern place that felt cold despite its size. She'd brought up the savings account, wanting to share her plans for Lily and Max. David's face had darkened. "You're meddling, Mom," he'd said. "We don't need your money." Laura's smile was thin, her words cutting. "The kids need to learn ambition, not handouts." Eleanor tried to explain it wasn't a handout, it was love, a legacy. But David shut her down. "Stay out of our lives." The final blow came a month later. A letter from David's lawyer arrived, crisp and formal, stating that Eleanor was no longer welcome in their home or near the children. No explanation. No discussion. She called. She wrote. She begged. But David never responded. The silence was worse than any argument. Lily and Max, now 10 and 8, were growing up without her. The photograph in her hands was the last she'd taken. A candid moment at a park. She hadn't seen them since. Eleanor wiped a tear from her cheek, the swing creaking as she shifted. The savings account sat untouched, growing quietly in the bank. She'd checked it last week. $2. 0.34. 672. 19. She'd done the math 1,000 times, picturing Lily's art school dreams, Max's love for science. But David's rejection had turned her gift into a burden. What was the point of it all if she couldn't even see them? The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Eleanor's neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, waved from across the street, her voice carrying over the quiet evening. "You okay, Ellie? You look lost in thought." Eleanor managed a smile. "Just remembering. That's all." Mrs. Callahan nodded, her eyes kind. "Memories are a heavy thing sometimes." Eleanor didn't reply. She stood, her knees protesting, and went inside. The house was too big for one person, every corner filled with ghosts. Henry's old armchair, David's childhood drawings pinned to the fridge, the quilt she'd made for Lily's crib. She sat at the kitchen table, the photograph still in her hand, and opened a drawer. Inside was a notebook, its pages filled with her handwriting letters she'd written to Lily and Max but never sent. She'd poured her heart into them. Stories of her life, advice, love. But they felt like shouting into a void. She picked up a pen, then stopped. What was the use? David had built a wall she couldn't climb. But as she sat there, something shifted inside her. The money wasn't just hers, it was theirs. Her grandchildren's. David could cut her off, but he couldn't take that away. She thought of her lawyer, Mr. Thompson, a kind man who'd handled Henry's estate. Maybe there was a way to ensure the money reached Lily and Max, with or without David's approval. Eleanor's heart beat faster. For the first time in years, a spark of defiance flickered. She wasn't done yet. She'd fought for every dollar of that $2 million. She'd fight for her grandchildren, too. Tomorrow, she'd call Mr. Thompson. Tomorrow, she'd start making things right. The morning sun filtered through Eleanor's kitchen window, casting a soft glow on the photograph of Lily and Max. She sipped her coffee, the mug warm in her hands, and stared at the number written on a slip of paper, Mr. Thompson's office. Her resolve from last night felt fragile in the daylight. But the ache in her chest pushed her forward. She dialed the number, her fingers trembling. Thompson Legal Services. A cheerful voice answered. This is Eleanor Grayson. I'd like to speak with Mr. Thompson, please. A moment later, his familiar voice came through. Eleanor, it's been a while. How can I help you? She took a deep breath. It's about my savings. For my grandchildren. I need to make sure they get it. But, my son, David, he's cut me off. A pause. I'm sorry to hear that. Let's figure this out. Can you come by today? By noon, Eleanor was seated in Mr. Thompson's office. A small, cluttered space filled with legal books and family photos. He was in his 60s, with kind eyes and a reassuring smile. She explained everything: the savings, David's rejection, the letter from his lawyer. Her voice cracked as she spoke of Lily and Max. The years without them. Mr. Thompson leaned back, tapping his pen. You want the money to go to Lily and Max. But David's made it clear he doesn't want you involved. We can work around that. A trust fund is your best option. You can set it up for the kids, with specific terms, say, for education or when they reach a certain age. David wouldn't have control unless you designate him as a trustee, which I don't recommend. Eleanor nodded, her mind racing. Can I make it so he doesn't know? Absolutely. We can keep it confidential. You'd need a trustee to manage it, someone you trust. Could be me. If you're comfortable, the money would be protected, and Lily and Max would get it when the time comes. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt a weight lift. Let's do it. I want it for their education, their future, but I don't want David to know until it's done. Mr. Thompson scribbled notes. We'll need to draft the trust agreement. You'll specify the terms: how much, when, and for what. I'll handle the bank transfer. You have the account details. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. $2 million. For Lily and Max. Equally. He whistled softly. That's a hell of a legacy. Eleanor. They'll be set for life. She smiled faintly, but her heart twisted. It's all I have left to give them. Back home, Eleanor sat at her desk, the photograph beside her. She opened her notebook and began writing another letter to Lily and Max. This one was different, not just memories, but a promise. She wrote about the trust, the money she'd saved, the dreams she had for them. Her pen moved quickly, the words spilling out. She didn't know if they'd ever read it, but it felt like a lifeline. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork. Mr. Thompson was efficient, guiding her through the legal maze. The trust was set up in a week. With strict instructions, the money was for Lily and Max's education or major life expenses. Accessible at 18. Eleanor chose Mr. Thompson as the trustee, trusting his integrity. She felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness as she signed the final documents. It was done. David couldn't stop it now. But the victory was hollow. Eleanor drove to the park where she'd last seen her grandchildren. She sat on a bench, watching kids play, their laughter echoing. She imagined Lily's paint-splattered hands, Max's curious questions about the stars. Were they happy? Did they miss her? The questions gnawed at her. That evening, she called Mrs. Callahan, needing to talk. Over tea, she shared the story, not the money, but the loss of her family. Mrs. Callahan listened, her hand resting on Eleanor's. You did the right thing, Ellie. You're giving them a future, even if they don't know it yet. Eleanor's eyes welled up. But what if they never know me? Mrs. Callahan squeezed her hand. They will. One day, kids feel love, even from a distance. Eleanor wanted to believe it. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The trust was her final stand. But it wasn't enough. She needed to see them, to know they were okay. An idea sparked. Dangerous and reckless. She could try to contact them. Just once. Without David knowing. A letter. Maybe. Sent through a friend. Or a visit to their school. Just to catch a glimpse. The thought terrified her. David's lawyer had been clear any contact could lead to legal trouble. But the pull of her grandchildren was stronger than fear. She sat up, her heart pounding. She'd spent her life playing by the rules. Saving. Sacrificing. Maybe it was time to break them. Eleanor spent the next morning at her kitchen table, pen in hand, staring at a blank sheet of paper. The idea of reaching out to Lily and Max consumed her. But the words wouldn't come. What could she say that wouldn't hurt them or anger David? She imagined their faces. Older now. Maybe not even remembering her. The thought was a knife in her gut. She called Mr. Thompson instead, needing reassurance. Did I do the right thing with the trust? She asked, her voice small. You did more than most. Eleanor, he said firmly. You've secured their future. That's love. Plain and simple. But I want to see them, she admitted. Just once. Is that possible? A long pause. Legally, it's risky. David's letter was clear about no contact. If he finds out, he could sue, claim harassment. But he hesitated. If you're careful, maybe a letter through a third party. No return address. I can't officially advise it, but I understand. Eleanor thanked him, her mind made up. She drove to a small stationery shop in town, buying a simple card with a watercolor flower on it. Back home, she wrote carefully, her handwriting steady despite her racing heart. Dear Lily and Max, she began. I'm your grandma, and I love you more than you can know. I'm always thinking of you. Be kind. Be brave. Follow your dreams. One day, I hope we can talk. She signed it simply. Grandma E. She addressed the card to their school, using a friend's name and address in another town as the sender. Mrs. Callahan agreed to mail it for her. No questions asked. You're doing what your heart tells you, she said, her eyes soft. Eleanor hugged her, grateful for the unspoken understanding. Days passed, and Eleanor waited, her nerves fraying. Had the card reached them? Did they read it? She checked her phone obsessively, though she knew there'd be no reply. She drove by their school one afternoon, parking at a distance. Kids poured out at dismissal, and her heart leapt at every glimpse of a girl with Lily's brown curls or a boy with Max's lanky frame. But she didn't see them. She drove home, tears blurring her vision. That night, she dreamed of Henry. He was young again, laughing, holding her hand. You're strong, Ellie, he said. Don't give up on them. She woke with a start, her cheeks wet. The dream felt like a sign. She couldn't stop now. The next week, she called an old friend, Sarah, who lived near David's city. Sarah was a retired teacher, discreet and kind. Eleanor explained everything, her voice breaking. Can you check on them? Just tell me they're okay. Sarah agreed without hesitation. I'll visit the school. Say I'm a volunteer. I won't mention you. I'll call you after. Eleanor spent the next few days in a haze, tending her garden to keep her hands busy. The roses were blooming, their scent reminding her of Lily's tiny hands picking flowers years ago. When Sarah finally called, Eleanor's heart stopped. They're okay, Eleanor, Sarah said gently. Lily's an art club, always drawing. Max is in a science fair. Won a prize last month. They're good kids. Happy, from what I saw. Eleanor sobbed. relief and pain crashing together. Do they talk about me? Sarah's voice softened. Not that I heard. But they're young. They might not know how to express it. Eleanor thanked her, hanging up with a heavy heart. They were okay. But they were strangers now. The card. The trust it was all she could do. But it didn't fill the hole in her life. She looked at the photograph again, her resolve hardening. She'd find another way. Maybe a gift. Something small. Sent anonymously. A book for Max about the stars. A sketch pad for Lily. She could do that much. She drove to a bookstore, her steps lighter with purpose. She chose carefully a science encyclopedia for Max, an artist's journal for Lily. She wrapped them herself, her hands steady now, and gave them to Sarah to deliver through the school. No names attached. It was a risk, but it was hers to take. Weeks turned into months, and Eleanor settled into a fragile routine. The trust was secure. The cards sent. The gifts delivered. But the silence from Lily and Max was deafening. She tended her garden, visited Mrs. Callahan, and wrote in her notebook, filling pages with memories and hopes. Yet the emptiness lingered, a shadow she couldn't shake. One evening, Mrs. Callahan stopped by with a bottle of wine and a knowing look. You're still fighting, aren't you? She said, pouring a glass. Eleanor sighed. I don't know how to stop. I keep thinking, maybe they got the card. The gifts. Maybe they're thinking of me. Mrs. Callahan nodded. You've done more than most. But you're allowed to live. Too. Ellie, what about you? Eleanor stared at her glass. Me? I'm just waiting. For what? Mrs. Callahan's voice was gentle but firm. You've given them everything. Maybe it's time to find something for yourself. The words hit hard. Eleanor had spent so long focused on Lily and Max, on the money, on David's betrayal, that she'd forgotten herself. She thought of Henry, his laugh, his dreams for her to be happy. Maybe Mrs. Callahan was right. The next day, Eleanor joined a local senior group, something she'd avoided for years. The first meeting was awkward strangers sharing stories of their lives, their losses. But a woman named Margaret, with a warm smile and a sharp wit, sat next to her. First time? She asked. Eleanor nodded. I'm trying something new. Margaret grinned. Good for you. Stick with us. We're a fun bunch. Over the weeks, Eleanor found herself laughing more, sharing bits of her story. Margaret became a friend, inviting her to book clubs, walks in the park. Eleanor began to feel lighter, though the ache for her grandchildren never faded. She started volunteering at a community center, teaching sewing to kids. Their eager faces reminded her of Lily and Max. And it hurt, but it also healed. One afternoon, while sorting fabric scraps, her phone rang. It was Sarah. Eleanor, I have news. Lily mentioned a card at school. She didn't know it was from you, but she kept it. She said it made her feel special. Eleanor's heart leapt. And Max? He's quieter, but I saw him with that science book. He's always reading it. Eleanor cried, her hands shaking. They'd felt her love, even if they didn't know it was her. It was enough for now. She thanked Sarah, her voice thick with emotion. That night, she wrote another letter, longer this time, telling them about her life, her love for them, her hopes. She gave it to Sarah, who promised to slip it into their school bags. But a week later, everything changed. A letter arrived, not from the kids, but from David's lawyer. Eleanor's hands shook as she opened it. The words were cold. Cease all contact with Lily and Max Grayson. Any further attempts will result in legal action. David knew. Somehow. He'd found out. Eleanor's stomach dropped. She called Mr. Thompson. Panicked. How did he know? The card. The gifts, they were anonymous. Mr. Thompson's voice was calm but serious. Could be a guess. Or someone saw something. I'll look into it. But Eleanor, you need to stop. For now. The trust is safe. He can't touch that. But contact. It's too risky. Eleanor hung up. Her world spinning. She'd gone too far. And now David was tightening the noose. She sat on her porch, the swing creaking, and stared at the photograph. Had she ruined everything? The trust was her legacy, but her heart wanted more. She couldn't give up. She made a decision. No more letters. No more gifts, not yet. But she'd wait. Watch. And find a way. Lily and Max were her heart. And no lawyer's letter could change that. Eleanor's days grew quieter. The lawyer's letter a heavy weight. She stopped sending cards. Stopped asking Sarah for updates. The fear of losing what little connection she had with Lily and Max kept her in check. But the trust was safe. Mr. Thompson assured her. David couldn't touch it. That was her anchor. She threw herself into the senior group, finding solace in Margaret's humor and the community center's sewing classes. The kids' enthusiasm reminded her of her grandchildren, and she taught them with a gentle patience. Her heart both full and breaking. At home, she filled her notebook with more letters she'd never sent, pouring out her love, her regrets. One spring morning, Margaret invited her to a local art fair. Come on, Ellie. You need some color in your life, she teased. Eleanor agreed, and they wandered through stalls of paintings and crafts. A young girl's artwork caught her eyeballed colors. A sketch of a family under a tree. It reminded her of Lily. She bought it, her hands trembling as she handed over the cash. You okay? Margaret asked, noticing her expression. It looks like something my granddaughter would draw, Eleanor said softly. Margaret hugged her. Tell me about her. Over coffee, Eleanor shared the story of the savings, David's rejection, the trust. Margaret listened, her eyes wide. $2 million. For your grandkids. Eleanor, that's incredible. And you're still fighting for them. I don't know if I'm fighting or just hoping, Eleanor admitted. Margaret smiled. Hope's a fight, too. That night, Eleanor hung the sketch in her living room, next to the photograph of Lily and Max. It felt like a small rebellion against David's control. She called Mr. Thompson the next day, needing to hear the trust was still secure. Everything's in place, he said. The kids will get it at 18. You've done everything right. But right wasn't enough. Eleanor's thoughts drifted to the future. Lily would be 13 now. Max 11. Were they still the same kids in her photo? She needed to know. But the lawyer's letter loomed large. She decided to focus on herself, as Mrs. Callahan had urged. She joined a book club, started painting with Margaret, even tried yoga. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened, like a bruise fading. One evening, Sarah called unexpectedly. Eleanor, I wasn't supposed to do this, but I saw Max at the library. He was reading that science book you sent. I mentioned I knew someone who loved science, too. He smiled, said he wished he could meet them. Eleanor's heart raced. Did you say anything else? No. I stopped there. But he's curious. Eleanor. They both are. The card. The gifts theory leaving a mark. Eleanor cried, hope flickering. She thanked Sarah, then sat on her porch, the swing creaking. The stars were bright, and she thought of Max, his love for the cosmos. She made a plan, not a letter, not a gift, but something bigger. She'd attend their school's public events, like a science fair or art show. She'd stay in the background, just to see them. It was risky, but she was tired of hiding. She called Margaret, sharing the idea. "You're brave," Margaret said. "Just be careful." David sounds unforgiving. "I know," Eleanor said, "but I need this. For me." The next week, she learned from Sarah about a school art exhibition. Lily's work would be there. Eleanor's heart pounded as she planned her visit. She'd go as a stranger. No contact, just a glimpse. It was a chance to see her granddaughter's world, to feel close again, even for a moment. The art exhibition was held in the school gymnasium, a bustling space filled with colorful displays and chattering families. Eleanor stood at the back, her scarf pulled high, her heart thudding. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on a table of sketches labeled Lily Grayson. The name alone brought tears. The drawings were vibrant flowers, faces, a starry sky. Eleanor's breath caught. It was like seeing Lily's heart on paper. She stayed in the shadows, watching. Then she saw a tall girl with brown curls, laughing with friends. Lily. Eleanor's knees weakened. She was beautiful, confident, her eyes bright with life. Eleanor wanted to run to her, but she stayed rooted, the lawyer's letter echoing in her mind. She left quietly, her heart full and shattered. Back home, she sat on her porch, the swing creaking, the photograph in her hands. Seeing Lily had been enough and not enough. She called Sarah, her voice trembling. "She's so grown up. She's amazing." Sarah's voice was warm. "You did that, Eleanor. Your love's in her, even if she doesn't know it." Eleanor hung up, staring at the stars. Max's stars. She thought of the trust, the $2 million waiting for them. It was her legacy, her love, untouchable by David's anger. But she wanted more than money for them. She wanted them to know her. The next day, she met Margaret for coffee, sharing the experience. "I saw her. Margaret." I didn't speak, but I saw her. Margaret's eyes shone. "You're stronger than you know. What's next?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "I wait. They're growing up. One day, they'll ask questions. The trust, the card, the gifts, they'll find me." Margaret nodded. "And you'll be there." Eleanor joined more community events, taught more classes, lived more fully. The pain of David's rejection never left, but it became part of her, like a scar. She wrote one last letter, not to send, but to keep. It told Lily and Max everything: her life, her love, the money. She sealed it in an envelope, placing it with the photograph. Years later, a knock came at her door. She was 80 now, her hands frilier, but her heart steady. She opened it to find a young woman with brown curls and a boy with a science book tucked under his arm. Lily and Max, now 18 and 16. "Grandma," Lily said, her voice trembling. Eleanor's tears fell. "You found me." Max held up the science book. "We got your gifts. And the trust. We wanted to thank you." They hugged her, and the years melted away. David wasn't there, but it didn't matter. Eleanor led them inside, the photograph on the table. They talked for hours, stories spilling out. The trust had reached them, but it was her love they felt most. As they left, Lily squeezed her hand. "We'll be back, Grandma." Eleanor stood on her porch, watching them go, the swing silent now. $2 million had been her gift, but this moment was her life. She'd fought, hoped, and won. Her grandchildren were home.